Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another live At The Waterhole with WildEarth and Africam. My name is Ben Coley, and I will be with you for the next couple of hours as we once again trawl the different cameras situated all around southern and eastern Africa, looking for natural delights such as this, which looks very much like what I keep believing to be wattled starlings, which I hope do occur in Kenya. We keep ending up at Eldonyo Lodge. There has been some great activity there, and I must double check my birding knowledge of East Africa, which is not wonderful, I have to say. If anyone wants to clarify one way or the other whether they do agree, indeed agree that these are what look to be wattled starlings or similar, let me know. I shall also do a quick bit of digging. And to do that, you can contact us via the website, via the app, and you can send in questions and comments. It's interactive, it's live, and we would love to hear from you. So I'm going to do a quick little bit of investigative work on these birds, and let's see if anyone can beat me to it. Very difficult to try and search for a particular bird just by describing it. Of course, there are many apps these days that you can take pictures of birds and potentially have them identified, but I don't have one for East Africa, unfortunately. It is definitely a starling of some description by looking at its what we call it a bird's jizz, its general impression of shape and size, that sort of classic silhouette. What does the bird look like? You can tell a difference. Even a non-serious birder could tell the difference between the shape of a duck and the shape of a penguin and the shape of a woodpecker or a kingfisher. That's sort of the first thing you look at. What type of bird does it look like? They are wattle starlings. They'll be non-breeding this time of year. So the wattle starling is more characterised by the big yellow wattle, as the name suggests, but that's only during the breeding season. Amazing how the birds can sit there in these trees and not spike themselves and all those thorns. We've got something else there in the background with a red face. Turn your face again. I'm sure I saw some red there. A quelea or a cardinal or a finch of some description. Looks like a tit-throat finch, perhaps. Again, if they occur in Kenya. It seems to be such a profitable waterhole, this, that at some point I'm going to have to head up there. There is actually a chance that I might be going to Kenya up in November, December time. I don't think it will be at Oldonyo, but I will definitely be taking a bird book and binoculars. Okay, it seems I've managed to find a sort of a bird checklist for that area, so I'm now frantically searching through for the starlings. So I have this conversation every time we go up there, and I never actually got to the bottom of it. So let's see. Robins, flycatchers. Okay. Wattle starling not mentioned. So it'd be a sharp starling, Hildebrandt starling. It's not a superb starling. It's not a great blue-eared starling. It's not red-winged. So maybe sharps or Hildebrandts. Let's have a look. No, definitely not shops. Oh, it all depends. Oh, well, that doesn't help. Pied starlings, maybe. Well, despite that list, from what I can see, it does look like a wattled starling. So I'm going to stick to my guns until told otherwise. And those very much do look like cutthroat finches. You can see those little birds right in the middle, in between the starlings. There's two of them. You can see the one on the right has got that red slash under the throat, hence the name cutthroat finch. Pretty pretty. We do see them down here in southern Africa as well, but not all that often, I have to say. I remember seeing some up in Makaleki, but I've seen some in the Hoedspruit area as well. But yeah, not often that you get to see a cutthroat finch, in my experience. But pretty little birds. A couple of little ones hiding there. No, they've all gone. Well, that was a bit of a challenging start. Always good to have a close up of some birds that need identifying. But so we've done quite well just by process of elimination here at Old Donio. So the straw-tailed wider, I remember identifying, and we also got a type of Turako as well a little while ago. But perhaps there is something at the waterhole itself. Okay, before we do that, let's have a look at the weather. Ah, well, see, now that's something a little bit easier to identify. We have some zebras. I see there have been a few messages coming through. I was so busy trying to verify my wattled starling statement that I'd missed some of the messages that had come through. So, Bundu, you're agreeing with me that you think it's wattled starlings. Also, honey badger saying that it does indeed look like wattled starlings. So I think I will have to stick to my guns. And Sparse, you were asking what's the most common starling species? Phew. Uh, I don't know off the top of my head. It'll be obviously area specific, but in terms of the entire world, we'd have to look into it. But you do get massive flocks, even in places in the Northern Hemisphere, in the UK, those beautiful murmurations of starlings, as they're called, where you get those massive flocks that all wheel and twist and turn in unison. It is, if you've ever actually seen it, I've never seen it myself firsthand on a massive scale, but you can have a look on um, videos on the internet and things. And when it's put to music, it is one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. The way they move, it's so rhythmical and fluid. How they all know their roles. It's like schooling fish. I've seen it in southern Africa with quilias. particularly out in areas like Namibia where you can get massive flocks of quellias. But it's a really, really beautiful spectacle to see a murmurations of starlings. Oh, Bundu, you're also saying that do have cutthroat finches at Oldonio. So good. I'm 2 for 2 in suggested IDs. So thank you to our cam operators for showing birds that also occur in southern Africa. Now, these, of course, are plain zebra, same as we have in southern Africa, but you'll notice a distinct difference that these ones are lacking the shadow stripe, that sort of brown line. Oh, that one looks pregnant on the left. Um, the brown line that runs through the white stripe that we see more down here in the Lowveld. That's just a regional difference. It used to be a separate species. It used to be called the Birchall zebra, but it's now been decided, thanks to genetic testing, it's the same species in East Africa as well. And it's just a difference in coloration, a regional variation that is found further south. But that female did look pregnant. It's hard to say now without looking at her because zebras are always quite tubby in appearance. They are quite rotund due to the gases in their hind gut. Oh, here comes an approaching elephant. So they always look quite well fed, but a pregnant zebra will have expanded a little bit more than that. And they can stay pregnant for, well, their general gestation period is around about 13 months or so. And it's quite a big foal that comes out. So you'll see a pregnant zebra. When you see her from behind, you can just sort of gauge how wide she is, if she doesn't mind me saying so. Oh, what a beautiful image walking straight towards the camera. Actually coming to you today from a game reserve, and whilst we are sitting here enjoying this elephant out my window, I have a female Inyala browsing on some fallen leaves. So completely encapsulated by wildlife. Very nice place to be. I've been thinking about your questions, Bus, in terms of most common starling species down here in southern Africa. I would say probably the glossy starling or the Cape starling. I think they've dropped the glossy part now. Names keep changing. They're the ones that we sort of see pretty much everywhere, but not necessarily in massive flocks. There's wattled starlings, so you can get in very large numbers. But we get the greater blue-eared starlings. We have the wattled starlings. What else do we have over here? We've got lots of different ones. Um, Birchalls, greater blue-eared. If you go up to the north of Kruger, you get a bit of a special starling that you only find in the far north of Kruger, which is the Meaves starling, which used to be called a long-tailed starling, as the name suggests. And then one of my favourite birds of all time is the violet-backed starling, which we only see in summer. It's an intra-African migrant, but it has this most incredible, vivid, iridescent, royal purple colour in the male, which is really spectacular. Just checking on my bird list to see which starlings I still need to get. There's a Myombo blue-eared starling that doesn't occur in South Africa, unfortunately, which I need to get. A rosy starling, which I think has only ever been seen once or twice in Southern Africa. Sharp-tailed starling, never seen one of those, but that's right up in the top of Zimbabwe only. And I think I've managed to tick all the other ones off. I've nearly completed. Darcy Miller European starlings, possibly the most common in the world. That will make sense. They're down here and they're all over Europe. So yeah, we'd have to do some digging in terms of numbers. Francis, you wanted to know whether elephants fall victim to trophy hunting. Um, yes, they do. Unfortunately, again, it's always a debate that I try and avoid, to be honest, on here because it can lead to sort of quite opinionated answers. But trophy hunting is still a thing, particularly amongst larger, more prized animals. The big thing with any form of trophy hunting, from my own perspective, is whilst I have no interest in doing it myself, one has to appreciate that it does bring in a lot of money for the area. I'm certainly not condoning it or encouraging it, but if the correct animal is chosen, i.e., one which is no longer in a breeding or no longer has breeding opportunities, an old individual, so it's not going to have an effect on the gene pool. The money that can be generated from a trophy hunt is probably at least 5 times that of a photographic tourist. And one has to remember that when you are protecting areas, that comes at a price. Somebody has to pay for the fence maintenance, the road maintenance, the anti-poaching units, the snare patrols, and everything that comes with protecting these areas. And that money has to be generated from somewhere. So I leave it all up to you individually to decide whether or not you approve of it. Um, whether you approve of it or not, there is a potential role as long as it is done ethically and correctly. Unfortunately, so there aren't very many big tuskers left because of all the hunting. Um, and so I don't know the specific rules and regulations, but it is an industry that is very well regulated these days, or it should be. Not something that appeals to me at all. I've never hunted. I've never enjoyed hunting. I had an air rifle when I was younger, and I think I inadvertently shot a pigeon or something once with it, and I felt so guilty about killing it for what I suppose was deemed sport. I was in my probably early to mid-teens that I don't think I ever used it again for anything other than targets. It's not something that interests me. But I do enjoy our rifle practices here, so I never had to use it in nearly 20 years of being out here, but it's a good thing to keep our skills quick. So the advanced rifle handling assessments and similar that we have to do, it's always fun to head down to the range. Frolicking Impala. The elephant's very much aware of the impala's presence. You can see him cocking his head to that side, getting a good look at him. He would have seen the movement coming in, I'm sure. And just keeping an eye out. Elephants have a tendency to sort of look at you out of one eye, turn their head to keep an eye on you. There's a gazelle in the background. Now, I do not know which gazelles or what gazelle that would be. Thompson's, maybe? But that's not something I've seen at this waterhole before. Elephants up at Old Doniol, they do seem to like to just take a time out when they come down to this waterhole. Often elephants come down, they drink, and then they head off again. But I've noticed here a lot of the bulls that we see here, they come down, they drink, and then they just loiter and they have a little bit of a rest and they drape their trunks over their tusks and they just chill for a little bit. This almost looks like an ambidextrous elephant as well. You can see that left tusk has been broken a little bit. There's a bit missing from the tip, but you can also see the tip of the right-hand tusk, from his perspective, is also sort of polished, suggesting it's been used a little bit. I wonder if he's quite happy using both tusks. So normally you just get a preference of one or the other, and you'll see those sort of grooves that are carved out into the ivory over many, many years of use, being used as a lever to snap branches and to pull bark off trees, dig up roots. Yeah, definitely a sort of a more polished effect of that one on the elephant's right, the left, as we're looking at it. Any Mango, how do reserves reintroduce animals that were held in captivity? Well, there are lots of different ways of doing it, and it will depend on the management strategies of the different reserves. As always, I think a lot of it will be dependent upon how captive that animal was. Was it captive but still kept wild? If it was hand reared and had sort of lost its somewhat wild instincts, I think it's unlikely that many reserves would even take that animal because it's just going to become fodder and it's potentially even cruel because it would have no clue you're thrusting it into a different environment. But normally speaking, when animals in general are introduced to an area, there will be a boma system. So a boma actually is sort of like a glorified pen, if you like, an enclosure, a fenced-in area where the animal will stay for a few weeks, maybe even longer, before it's let out. And that just allows the animal to get used to the surroundings, to let it get used to the smells, to the sounds, and begin to think of that area as home. A little bit like when you get a new cat, you'll keep it in the house potentially for a week or two before you let it out, so it learns that this is home. Um, and then the gates will be opened. Normally, the animal will then spend a lot of time in and around that area because that's where it feels comfortable. And then hopefully it will naturally disperse and find its place within that ecosystem. You can argue, of course, that some animals never lose that instinct, but there are cases where you couldn't possibly release an animal into the wild where there are predators if that animal hasn't had much exposure to predators, for example. The chances are it's going to get picked off very, very quickly. I've seen examples of that, wildebeest that were introduced into the Sabi Sands probably about 15 years ago now. and they were brought in from a reserve that didn't have any predators. So these were not captive bred animals, but they were thrust into an ecosystem with apex predators to which they had no experience of, and it was just like a shooting range. Basically, those wildebeest got picked off night after night, and I think it was about 600 or so of them were destroyed within a month or two. The lions had an absolute field day. Something like cheetah, for example, wild cheetah that have experience of predators are actually quite highly sought after because obviously cheetahs fall foul to lions and other predators quite regularly. I've just heard we've got an interesting thing to see somewhere. I didn't hear where it was. It sounds like we've got a bird with a kill. Let's go to wherever it is. Ah, Rosie's pan, and we've got a beautiful Hamerkop who was eating something, I think. You got something? Did you let it go or did you swallow it already? Looks like possibly just cleaning the beak. Maybe you had a platana or another amphibian that has produced some sort of toxic secretion under stress, and now the Hamerkop is cleaning itself. But one of their favorite prey species is the platana. What did we saw something eating a platana recently? The heron? Can't remember now. Yeah, so we may have missed whatever the Hamerkop had eaten, but judging from its behaviour, I would think um, some sort of amphibian. Certainly, you've got toads, of course, have those parotid glands behind the head, which are highly toxic. Any of you that have had a dog that have tried to put a toad in its mouth will know about that. It sort of creates this foamy thing and a very sort of nauseous sensation. It's basically a cardiotoxin, so it can have some quite dire effects. And then a lot of other frogs can be release sort of toxic secretions, and those platanas also lots of sort of mucousy stuff over their body. And even fish, of course, have sort of scales and things. So we definitely saw the Hamerkop giving himself a bit of a clean there, but my money is on a platana and what they do like to eat. We've got something else. Very distinctive bird, though, the Hamerkop. So Hamerkop is the an Afrikaans word meaning hammerhead, sort of shape of a head, a little bit like the shape of an anvil. Of course, most famous for their enormous nests that they build, monstrous things. The largest single nest, certainly in Africa. We're not including the social weaver nests, of course, which are colonies, but enormous piles of sticks. Apparently, I read somewhere that could contain as many as 10,000 sticks will go into building just one nest. But they don't nest on top of those sticks. It's then hollow inside, and then often it is lined with mud to help with insulation. And there is an entrance hole that the adults go in and out of. And they're so big and so sturdy that you often get large birds nesting on top of them. The Verreaux's eagle owl is often seen on top of Hamerkop nests, and other large birds of prey as well make use of it. You'll often also see sort of debris. When I mean say debris, I mean human rubbish, unfortunately, contained within those nests. They're a little bit like the magpies of the northern hemisphere. They do like shiny things and interesting things, and I'll often take them back and include them in their nests. Not sure if that was noise coming from the Hamerkop. I don't think so. It sounds more like a sort of a moorhen or a coot. And the Hamerkop, I seem to remember, sounds almost like a squeaky balloon, like when you're rubbing a balloon. It's got a strange noise. So I was asked whether birds have a problem with ticks, and yes, birds do get ticks, although you don't often see them because they'll be attached to the skin under the feathers. The ones that are within reach of the beak should be removed by the bird, but occasionally there will be ticks attached around the face and the eyes, where you can actually see it because there are less feathers there, perhaps. Um, I don't know of any specific diseases given to birds via ticks. It's not something you hear much about. I think the bird is able to groom itself pretty well, of the ones that it can reach. So just with the exception of around the head and the neck. And also those oily secretions that they put on their feathers will make it more difficult to ticks to attach and also act as a sort of an insecticide to some extent as well. Hans, you're asking if there are smaller birds that are preyed on by other birds. Well, yes, there are many birds that prey on other birds, from from the larger ones. So things like well, the birds of prey. My first thought was that you get something like a ground hornbill will quite happily eat other birds if it can catch them, but more chicks. You get some of the shrike species. I've seen a grey-headed bush shrike raiding a nest of something and pulling chicks out of it. The African harrier hawk, or the new name for the old gymnogene, regularly raids things like weaver nests. Probably the most famous example of all of them would be something like the falcons, the peregrine falcons that love doves and pigeons. Um, and kill them on impact with the speed of those dives reaching, the high 300s, maybe even 400 kilometers an hour, and smacking into those birds in flight. So, yeah, absolutely, there are lots of birds that are predated upon by other birds. I think the smallest bird that I can think of that is a predator, I can't think of anything a lot smaller than the bush shrikes, but there probably are some others. Yeah, that was a nice little bit of time spent with something different, a beautiful Hamerkop. Let's head down to Tembe Elephant Park. Ooh, and lots of A's. Nice to see a big group of elephants here at Tempe. We often just see the males coming to the waterhole and playing in these little mud wallows here on the near side. Nice to see a big breeding herd come through. I like the way they've spread out all around the dam as well. A bit of overzealous behaviour for that youngster. It'd be nice if we can see some actually frolicking in the water. We've had some amazing sightings of that, particularly up at Jamala. I remember a huge number of elephants all playing around in the water. This youngster coming in, greeting, touching mouths and trunks. How sweet's that, just walking under the tusks quite nonchalantly. But it's a very nice relaxed family group as they're all spread out. Often you'll find herds come down, they'll all stand together, stand next to one another and have a drink, but lovely to see them all spread out all around the dam. Jungle Jim, you're right, it is a heavenly scene. Such a beautiful area this, and to have this lovely smattering of elephants right the way across it, very, very special. This one on the left looks like a floppy ear. You sometimes do that, the cartilage gets damaged. Two floppy ears. I wonder what happened to you. Like things hanging down. Now, I don't know the answer to this myself, but I wonder if she's got one ear that flops down, it's the far side ear, if that does impede her ability to hear properly. She's lost that sort of satellite dish structure of an elephant ear. Oh, possibly another one there on the right with a floppy ear. Whether that's a genetic thing, perhaps? I love the way they arc that chunk up over their head like that. beautiful scenes. You can see that particularly large one at the back. I've just noticed has got a collar on as well, so it's not like a lunchbox that she's carrying. That is a collar for radio tracking. Very interesting to monitor the movements of these animals, important for research and understanding them. Of course, we're still learning the ecological roles and the impacts that elephants do have on environments. Yes, destructive, you could argue, but also very creative as well. Changing landscapes. We like to use the term ecological engineers. They can turn woodland into grassland, creating microhabitats by pushing over trees, making foliage and vegetation available to other animals that wouldn't otherwise be able to reach them. They do a lot of very good things, producing a lot of dung, good for nutrient recycling. Think of all the dung beetles, those big piles of elephant dung that house countless species of arthropod. And of course, their way of feeding on fruits and then having those seeds deposited in fresh dung piles. You'll often see things growing out of elephant dung, lots of sort of mushrooms, particularly up in the north of Kruger. I remember seeing a lot of the wild date palms. They love to eat those fruits, and you'll often see little palms sprouting up from old piles of elephant dung. Very, very important to understand their relationship with the rest of the ecosystem. Looks like this little youngster on the right, you can just see the tusks beginning to poke out from the gum line, I suppose you want to call it that, just when they lifted his trunk up. That normally happens at around the age of 3 or thereabouts. Okay, let's head back up to Kenya and Oldonyo. Sounds like we've got some more animals of the waterhole there. We've got lots of illies, some frolicking in the water. They're beautiful to see. Hans, you wanted to know who are rowdier, the bachelor herds or the breeding herds? Generally speaking, it's the breeding herds where you see a little bit more interaction. The social bonds there are very, very close. And you've got youngsters pushing their luck that are learning, pushing their boundaries, having to be disciplined from time to time. Young males often sort of play fighting and pushing and shoving one another to learn their own strength and establish their hierarchies. Generally speaking, bachelor groups of elephants are pretty chill. They don't, well, interact certainly, but because most of them won't be in musth, and if one does come into musth, he'll be off trying to track down a suitable female. But generally, those bachelor herds will then break up, and they will only come back together when those animals are not in musth again. So as a general rule, definitely more rowdy amongst the family groups. And certainly from a walking perspective and a safety perspective, on paper at least, you need to be a lot more careful of a breeding herd than you do a solitary bull or a little group of bulls, assuming nobody is in musth, of course. Females will always protect their young. So yeah, you give a breeding herd a lot more space than is necessary perhaps for a lone bull. But as we saw yesterday, discussing that attack on the giraffe, you must always be wary. Interesting to see this one on the right with a tusk growing in the wrong direction. We do see that sometimes. Again, just a little sort of genetic abnormality. Elephants are very resourceful. It won't be hampering them in any way, shape, or form will have learnt to use it, and will be able to use it in ways that other elephants are not able to use their own tusks. There's a beautiful big bull who's just walked in front of us here. Looks a little bit like Fang, who we used to see at Juma. I'm not sure if she's been seen recently. Suggesting that the one was being a bit selfish, the one standing in the middle. You could argue that, I suppose, or he's the intelligent one who thought, well, rather than standing on the edge and splashing myself, I should get in there and take advantage. No one else seemed to be bothered. It was a lovely time to photograph them as well when they're flinging water around, try and use a nice fast shutter speed, freeze those droplets. And after they've soaked themselves like this, particularly if the sun is out, if you've got the sort of sunrise, sunset, that low angle of the sun, just their skin becomes sort of reflective and almost iridescent. He does have great aim, but it's amazing how accurate they are. Look at that. The majority of that stuff being tossed up in the air, that muddy water, is landing exactly where it's supposed to. But many years of practice. Mercedes bin, yes, we can call this one Twisted Tusk, if you like. A nice little tongue twister. A tongue twister of Twisted Tusk. Say that 10 times quickly. Big rip out of the ear as well. What happened there? That just shows you how quickly behaviour can change. Wow. The only thing I can think of to have that reaction on elephants like that is people. I can hear some voices just in the background on the ambient sound there, so maybe some people surprised the elephants, but you can see just how quickly things can change. Amazing. Well, 1 minute we had 10 or 12 huge elephants, and now nothing. You'll see them running in the background, still running away. Well, that was a shame, but interesting to see, say, how quickly that behaviour can just change on a dime. Strangely, hasn't seemed to have bothered the impalas, though. Yeah, no sign of any elephants now. A lot of people are surprised that there aren't more incidents between people and animals, particularly out doing what we do over here. But that's a perfect example of, generally speaking, animals fear people. That's millennia of experience of having bad experiences with people, and we're very, very fortunate when you come to more touristy areas that, because of the good ethics that have been shown by guides for potentially multiple generations of the shorter lived animals, at least, they have learned to trust us, and it's hugely important that we continue to build that trust in order to facilitate these incredible wildlife experiences. But it's still a very different experience on foot to vehicles, very tolerant of vehicles most of the time, but on foot, it's generally the fight or flight reaction. We very much saw flight, and that is the normal reaction, but you must always be prepared for fight. Okay, well, the exodus of elephants at least opened up an opportunity for this lone, at the moment at least, zebra to come in for a drink. Up, here come a few more. But I think we're going to head up to Tau Waterhole over in the northwest of South Africa, up to Madikwe. Sounds like we have some wildebeest having a drink there. Let's go for a change of scenery. A mini Serengeti. Oh, look at the way those waterbucks are struggling in the mud. It is a potential danger this time of year. Animals getting stuck in the mud as the water dries up. So well adapted for that sort of lifestyle. You can see how strong and stocky these waterbucks are in comparison to some of the more delicate antelope species that we have. Impala and Inyala I've seen being stuck in the mud before, but very rarely, from what I know at least, do waterbuck get stuck. You can see they are quite powerful animals. Oh, lots of them today. There was a question asked a little bit earlier that I didn't get round to from Hans. Sorry, Hans, but this is sort of a good time to come back to that. You asked whether antelopes have a preferred horn, just like elephants have a preferred tusk. Um, I don't think so, but possibly it will be interesting to actually watch. It's not something I've ever considered. It's not something that is well documented. You don't often see more wear and tear on one horn than the other, but don't forget these antelope horns are really there for one reason only, and that is for fighting with other males. And generally speaking, you're going to use them both in tandem with each other. If you do only have one horn, we do sometimes see, for example, impalas with broken horns, and they can be particularly dangerous in and around the rutting season because they don't lock horns and push one another. They have, always takes me back to uh, Terminator 2 when I say this, but it's like stabbing weapons. It's a blade that is used as opposed to something that can be locked together for a test of strength. So it's not like where elephants use their tusks to, say, dig up roots or to rip the bark off trees to get to the cambium. And the only time you might see an antelope doing something else with it is they do engage in what's called mud caking, where they'll thrash their horns around in the mud, possibly to try and get rid of any ectoparasites, which are considering getting onto the horn. You get things like the horn moths that are forever trying to lay their eggs there. Um, or maybe, and also what it may do is make the horns look bigger when that mud dries. So more of a sort of a sexual status thing. Sometimes you'll see kudus, the males will use their big twisted horns to wrap around vegetation and pull vegetation down lower so that they can reach it to browse on. That would be the only example I can think of where perhaps they might prefer to use one side than the other, but I've never noticed it or heard about it. So you see no difference in the horns. They're both the same length. One doesn't look more worn than the other in this particular individual. That gloopy mud. There's our crocodile and our grey heron. Anime, you're asking, are there two antelope species that are more related than others? Um, well, antelope classification is a bit strange. It's the only group of animals I know that is divided up into something a little bit different. Antelopes are divided up into tribes. So you have things like bovini, which are the bovines, the cows. Trying to remember them all now. I think there's seven or eight. Impalas are in their own group, which is called Acepteroni or something, with regard to their Latin name, which is Apiceros, so it must be Apicerini. So any antelopes that are within the same tribe as one another are a little bit more closely related. So the Traglophini is the spiral horned antelope, so that includes things like Inyala and kudu and bushbuck and Eland. And I suppose it is, well, it is possible that occasionally you get some sort of hybridization, some sort of inbreeding between tribe members, as it were. So in Yala and Bushbuck, there are cases, I believe, where there has been some interbreeding recorded. So I think you could argue that things are in the same tribe. And then obviously you do have very similar species if you consider the wildebeest, the black wildebeest, and the blue wildebeest. They're going to be far more closely related to some other antelopes as well. Can't remember exactly how many. I think there's seven or eight. I'm just trying to check. So you've got Antelopini. Um, there's one for sheep and goats. There's the dwarf antelopes, which is Neotragini, Klipspringers, Oreotragini. The horse antelopes, Hippotragini. The duikers, which are Cephalopini. Goats and sheep is Caprini. Also, where we get Capricorn from, the sea goat, of course, the constellation, the zodiac sign. The typical antelopes, Antelopini, Alcelaphini, and Apiceratini. Well, there you go. There's a lot of long words that we probably didn't need to go through, but it's good. I used to know them all and I used to know the members, but it's not something I've thought about for a long time. I'd rather concentrate on this lovely little spoonbill. Far too many eenies for the last few minutes. All these birds having a nice little doze. Looks like red-billed teals and possibly a shell duck there, but very hard to tell when they've all got their heads tucked away. So you see there, it doesn't look as if one horn is being used more than the other. Let's say this is by no means a particularly aggressive bit of behavior. It's just playful. Although when they get down on their knees, it's becoming a little bit more serious. So you can see those ridges really sort of playing their role now. So the way they twist their necks, those ridges lock together and they can actually push against each other's horns. But this is very much a hierarchical thing going on here. You see, these are not fully grown males. They're not quite as bulky as some of the other ones we've seen. Their horns are by no means full length yet. These will not be territorial animals. Remember, Waterbuck are territorial. The males are territorial. And the females will roam between male territories, not holding their own, but generally speaking, will be more likely to be attracted to the best territories, which will be held by the strongest males, which will give them the best chance of mating and passing on genetics. Oh, hello. Getting a little bit feistier now. That's quite iconic with all the dust cloud around them. They seem to have disappeared. This one was completely unimpressed by what was going on. Very nonchalant about the whole situation. Oh, they're back. Well, I think we can establish which one won looking at that. And this is the one on the right there. You can see that body posture. Definitely had the bigger of the two horns. I guess some form of dominance has been established. But that was very nice to see. And say a little bit more aggression towards the end there. Let's have a look at the coat as well. I don't know if that's just the angle, but it almost looks as if there might be some moisture on the coat because waterbucks do have that very thick coat in comparison to a lot of antelopes, and they can sweat liters and liters of sweat under stressful situations. One of the reasons that they are very water dependent animals. They do sweat an awful lot because of that heavy coat, so they need to drink more often than many other antelopes. And the blacksmith plover, or the blacksmith lapwing, I should say now. So fairly inactive nests of those weavers at the moment. Be a hive of activity in the summer with males building those nests, displaying to females. Opportunities to mate and nurture some young inside those balls. They'll always have to be on the lookout for the Deirdric's cuckoo, which is the cuckoo that does tend to parasitize the weaver family. A beautiful bird, a Deirdric's cuckoo. Greens and whites and yellows, an iridescent coloration. There's hardly any cuckoos around in southern Africa at the moment, with the exception, I think, of the Class's cuckoo, which is very, very quiet during the winter months. The majority of the other cuckoos are intra-African migrants, so they go up to sub-Saharan Africa during our winter months, and then they will return in the summer when temperatures raise. All with very distinctive calls, the red-chested cuckoo being the most famous of them all. Okay, that was a nice little interlude there. Lovely to see those two waterbuck going at it. Let's head back up to Old Onyo, and I think we've got some more zebras. Many more zebras. Waiting to see the first hoof to be thrown. In gatherings like this, we normally get a little bit of intraspecies aggression. Bubbling stove, isn't it? There's all sorts of activity, but nobody really wants to get too involved yet. A lot of pushing and shoving. It's when they rear up on their back legs it gets exciting. I'm sure there's the occasional nip being thrown. Oh wow, an eland! You're going to have to wait your turn, eland. Right, all sorts of Aldonia today. A gazelle, but we've had an eland, lots of elephants. See those twisted horns we were talking about, those spiral horned antelopes, also in that Traglyphini tribe. Massive antelope. You see a great big eland bull. It's got the same weight as a buffalo. 900 kilograms of antelope, and yet they could jump a fence 3 meters high. Incredible dexterity for such a big animal. Imagine that. Oh, there's the first kick. There's huge power in the legs of those eland. Yes, like a bubbling pot on the stove. A very effervescent situation going on here. Lots and lots of movement. A few more kicks being thrown. I see the few bites being handed out. Very entertaining to watch. Difficult to see in this sort of melee of stripes, but there seems to be a disproportionately large number of males in here for me. Unless they've sort of gone in shifts and now the males are coming down to have a drink. It's very hard to keep track of everything. Oh wow, not that it really helps you watching this at home, but I've got a beautiful big male poodle walking past my window. Amazing. Anyway, this zebra's as lovely as this is, I really want those elands to come down for a drink as well. Yes, we've got two males in there. Carol, you're saying you love the way that zebra's ears stand up. I agree with you. They're obviously very equine in nature. You can see them constantly moving around, picking up sounds, beautiful markings as well. Look at them moving around. Look at two radar dishes pointing forwards there, the one on the right. Those sort of, yeah, sort of tubular structures, almost like rhino ears, actually, white rhino ears. Like most animals, when they hear something or they're not sure about something, they'll lock onto it. Their vision is good, but not fabulous, but their hearing and sense of smell is excellent. Renee, I don't know whether zebras are particularly territorial, as it were, or aggressive around the waterhole towards other species, but I honestly don't think any other species would want to come down and have a drink with this chaos going on. There's far too many teeth flying around and too many kicks flying out. Obviously, this is a sort of a situation that we don't see all that often down in southern Africa, where we generally just have little family groups come down to drink in fours, fives, and sixes. Not often we get to see big herds of zebra coming down to drink, but I've never seen one chase them away. I mean, you can see the Eland is just standing there waiting patiently again in the background for their opportunity. But I honestly don't think any other animal would want to come down and have a drink unless there's far too much risk involved. But probably that sort of group mentality, a bit of social psychology. If one of them decided to chase something off, I imagine the rest would probably join in. These elands use their bulk and muscle their way in. They've got tired of waiting. Gillian, indeed, you can see where the collective. Oh, look at that! Collective term of a dazzle of zebra comes from. It's just a melee of stripes. Love the way that Eland are just waiting their turn. It's getting easier. As you can see, there are so many kicks being passed out there. It's not a good place to find yourself unintentionally or unnecessarily. That Eland at the back has got some funky horns that they're almost meeting in the middle. Well, looks like more and more leopards are dispersing. These elands are getting closer and closer. I think this one going to have a go. Yes. Ah, that's brilliant to see. It's been a long time since I've seen eland in person. Last time was when I was up in northern Kruger. We do get some herds up there occasionally, but very, very rare to see eland in the south. No big bulls here. They do tend to be more solitary, the big bulls. But a mightily impressive animal when you do get to see one. And you're also enjoying how the elands were patiently waiting their turn. I see that a little bit of order has been restored. Less zebras means less chaos, and yeah, less of a risk of a flailing hoof. But this is very special for me. So first time I've seen eland on live at the Waterhole. I don't know how often they have been seen on any of the other feeds, but this is a first for me. As females can range far and wide during the drier seasons, looking for good browse. They will browse and graze, but generally speaking, they will browse more so. They'll also feed on fruits, bulbs that they'll dig up, and roots. It's not a particularly water dependent animal, but they'll take the opportunity like anything will when the opportunity presents. See, there's little dewlaps on the throat. So these are younger animals and females here. A big male has a very extensive dewlap, a bit like those big bulbous bits of skin we see on the marabou storks up at Victoria Falls. Thought to help with thermoregulation, more skin area, surface area to help with evaporative cooling. A little bit of a horn deformity, a little genetic problem with this one on the left. along with the two oxpeckers. I'd say not so important for females. Generally only going to be used for self-defense against predators or for protecting of the youngsters. Generally speaking, you find animals or antelope species that live in more open habitats. You'll find both sexes have the horns. Those that are more browsing animals and occupy habitats that are a lot thicker in terms of vegetation, you'll find the females won't have horns. So kudu, inyala, bushbuck, good examples of that. Whereas things like wildebeest, buffalo, eland, things that prefer slightly more open areas, they need a way to defend themselves. The other antelopes will rely on escape and not being seen in that thicker vegetation. But if you're out in exposed areas, or you're particularly large and obvious to your predator, it's important that the females also have the ability to defend themselves and particularly their youngsters. The other very famous sort of fact about elands, not that we'll pick it up from here because of the soft substrate, but you particularly hear in the males, is when they walk. You hear this little clicking sound, which is thought to be the two toes of the hoof because of the weight of the animal spreading the hoof, and when they lift their foot up, they sort of click together, a little bit like clicking one's fingers. You hear it very much more obviously in the males than you do the females, probably because of that extra weight. But there's always been a bit of a debate about what is the point of it. Is it just one of those things? Could it be a territorial dominance thing that, the heavier you are, the louder the click as you walk? Could be something, some form of sort of sexual selection, dominance hierarchy, or it could just be coincidental. But very similar track to a buffalo. In fact, it's very easy to confuse the two. A big male eland and a buffalo track are almost identical in terms of their shape and form, but what you will find on the eland track is that the two tips of those two hooves overlap one another, whereas the buffalo would almost make like a heart shape. With the eland, there'll be an overlap of one toe over the other, or one edge of the hoof over the other edge. And a warty, everybody taking the opportunity to have a drink and Oldonio. Jill, I'm sure lions do come to this pan. I've not seen any lions here, but our avid viewers, who I know keep very close tabs on things, I have no doubt that there have been lions seen here. I think a few days ago somebody said that a cheetah had been seen, or a coalition of cheetahs had been seen at this waterhole, not during one of our live sessions. But I have no doubt that lions do frequent this area. You can certainly see there's an abundance of prey, so I see no reason why not. Tasha, you're asking if the Elands are going to chase the warthog away? It certainly doesn't look like it. There's no great um, competition between the two of them. You might see that the warthog chooses to get out of the way of such a large animal, but that was not being chased. But thank you, warthog, for potentially ruining my point. But no, not generally seen to be aggressive animals, Elan. They're quite docile as a rule. Lovely banding on their front legs. Never noticed that before. Well, that was very special. I'm already beginning to think of my highlights. Those two Waterbucks having a proper go at one another was pretty special, but just because we don't see it very often, I think currently topping the list is the thought arrival of some Eland. Very, very special. Okay, well, that was very, very cool to see. But let's head back to town. Looks like we've got some more elephants at the dam. Much calmer than when the zebras we were just witnessing were causing chaos there. Just take a look at those ducks in the foreground. Is that a yellow-billed duck? Can't quite see. Doesn't look like one of the normal teals or the shell ducks that we see here. Got the bottom sticking up in the air. Glance at something there out of his left-hand eye and decided that enough is enough. I don't think I could get in any closer on those ducks in the foreground. Difficult to see. They look like they could be yellow-billed ducks, but we're just not quite close enough. I can't make out if that is a yellow beak. Not sure what else it would be. Definitely not one of the teals that we've been looking at there. Hive of activity, certainly. I think so. When I get the opportunity, I shall be disappearing into Kruger and going to visit some of my favourite haunts like Sable Dam, head down to Lake Panic, other areas where you get lots of nice water birds and things, although, of course, not as many this time of year. But I was walking around the bush today and I was actually quite grateful that I was still hearing bird calls and recognising them, rattling cisticulars and yellow-breasted apelices apple. It feels like it should be yellow-breasted apple-eye as a plural. Golden-tailed woodpeckers I've been hearing. They're nice to know that that residual memory is still there. It'll just take some time to re-hone, I'm sure. But some people find remembering bird calls much easier than others. We see if somebody is quite musical, if you play a musical instrument, you normally find that those people are able to recognize bird calls much more quickly or learn bird calls more quickly than the tone deaf amongst us, like myself. I have to work quite hard. I remember when I was studying the list, the Fugaza core list, when I did my SKS birds. You have to, I mean, that was 100 and something bird calls you had to learn, and these were not birds that I saw regularly or knew the calls of already. And that takes a lot of work. You've got to try and find ways to remember them, associations between the rhythm, come up with something that the bird is saying in inverted commas that works for you. But the second you stop doing it or you don't hear them, they do disappear out of the brain very, very quickly. As a sort of an experiment, I remember about a year ago, I listened to the call list again and tested myself on them. I didn't get very many right at all. I'd have to go back and redo a lot of those. What's attracted your attention, Mr. Waterbuck, with your muddy legs? Shows you how deep that mud is. Good afternoon, Canine Girl. Glad you could join us. We're having a great day, thank you. I hope your day is equally great. Characteristic white ring, of course, around the backside of the Waterbuck, giving rise to its scientific name of Cubus ellipsiprimnus, the ellipsy bit being fairly self-explanatory. A strange design in nature, this one, but potentially the following mechanism that we talk about so often, where animals can key off another animal's rear parts so that they can stay together, visual communication, particularly through thicker areas. And it's always made sense to me to have a circle as opposed to lines, which we see in a lot of other animals, because the whole point is that you want to stand out whilst you're moving through thick undergrowth, which is often found close to water and waterbucks. And there aren't very many branches that grow in circles. So I would think that circle does stand out and would allow for groups of animals to keep in visual contact with each other. Almost feel like this one's lost the rest of his friends. There was lots of waterbuck earlier. The only one left. Hello? Where is everybody? I'm not sure, says the spur-winged goose in the bottom there. Waterbuck seems to be unsure what it's doing. He's a little confused. Go and have a drink, and that will make things better. Speaking of, it sounds like the elephants are back at Oldonyo. All bulls again today, as we're saying. I don't think I've ever seen a breeding herd here at this waterhole as of yet. I'm sure it'll happen. Don't have any great explanation as to why that is the case, but obviously a very healthy population of male elephants in this area. Interesting watching the bigger one at the back there. Watched very carefully as this one came around, almost saying, "Why are you here? What are you doing? What's your plan?" And as soon as this one had a drink, the one at the back also relaxed and had a drink as well. He wasn't quite sure what was going on and had satisfied himself that he's just changed locations for a drink. Sort of giving him a bit of a stare, isn't it? I feel this one at the back's not overly happy with the one having a drink closest to us. Keeps giving him the hairy eyeball. I wonder if we might get a little bit of a nudge coming his way at some point. Quite the pose of this one at the back, though, standing with ears outstretched. There's a lovely photo of this one in the front. Would get out the way, but very photogenic. This one at the back, beautiful specimen. Joanne Miller, you're very welcome. And I'm glad that you have enjoyed the show. It's been a good one, actually. Yeah, we've had a nice variety of different species today. Started off with me having to identify a bunch of birds, which I wasn't too sure about, but very happy that I think I got them all correct. But yeah, Old Donio has been pumping today. Really interesting things to see. And thank you, Diane. I'm glad you also enjoyed the commentary. Sometimes worry that we just sort of waffle on here in the background, but it's you just let the brain do its own thing, I suppose. What I do think is a real shame is that we can't get really up close and personal and look at sort of some insects. I'm in a bit of an insect mood at the moment. So I got a new book recently which has got so much cool information about everything from lacewings to dragonflies to cockroaches and ants and termites. It's one of my real interests at the moment. But yeah, we'll have to get some macro cameras at some point. Because I'm prepping for my second stargazing night at where I am at the moment. Last night, unfortunately, we had to cancel because of the weather, which was rather frustrating, but tonight's forecast is much better. And since we're talking about insects, I should give you a little quiz, wonderful viewers. There is, of the 88 constellations in the night sky, there is one that is an insect named by well, it wasn't named by the Greeks actually, it was named by a French person. I know it was the Dutch, in fact, in around about the 1600s, but there is one constellation named after an insect. Let's see if anybody knows which one it is. It is in the southern sky. The said constellation also has a potential predator of that insect in the sky next to it. In African star lore, though, there is a little constellation, well, what we would call, named by the Greeks, as Delphinus, the dolphin, which is a lovely little constellation, one of my favourites. But in some African tribal star lore, that's known as the Mopani worm. But to say there is one with an official Latin name referring to an insect. It sounds like we've got some elephants at Victoria Falls, which we don't often see, so let's quickly go over there and enjoy that. Or enjoy them. A nice little breeding herd. Canine girl, I'm sorry that work gets in the way of you watching WildEarth and learning and observing and working with wildlife and nature. Unfortunately, it's the way of the world. We would all very much like to not have to do it. But it's one of life's little necessities, unfortunately. But yeah, look, I'm trying to think if I've seen Ellies up at Victoria Falls. I don't think I ever have. Mercedes Bin, you're answering my little quiz there. You've gone for a scorpion. Now I'm going to be a little bit picky here, but I did say insect, whereas scorpion is an arachnid. So yes, you're quite right in terms of something. It's an arthropod, but not officially an insect. And the predator with the eagle, well, yes, there is Aquila the eagle. It's on the other side of the sky. But yeah, seen as an eagle. Some cultures see it as a vulture as well, Aquila, but named Aquila after the eagle. Look at that wading through the water. That's very, very special. But good guess, but not the insect. It's a very small constellation right next to the Southern Cross. Hello, little ones, wading through the water. You're very cute. Rachel, yes, you are correct. It is Musca. Musca the fly. Well done. So the common house fly's Latin name is Musca domestica. So Musca means fly in Latin. And yeah, the only constellation named after an insect. And next to it in the sky is a rather diminutive and faint constellation. Looks like a sort of an elongated diamond, but that is chameleon. So there's a chameleon next to the fly in the sky. It's inevitable that one of these elephants was going to chase those storks. Oh, don't worry, Mercedes Bean. It was a good try. I'd say I'm being a little bit picky between arachnids and insects. And say you could dip into many different cultures and find lots of different things up there in the sky. We tend to stick with the more traditional Greek and Latin ones, or what are the recognized 88 constellations according to the International Astronomical Union. But there are, of course, lots of different shapes and different countries and different cultures up there. One elephant's just gone barreling off onto the left, chasing something. That's probably that poor stork. I love it when the Ellies have been walking through the water and you can see the water line. Looks like they've got some sort of Britney Spears knee-high socks going on there. Who are you chasing, elephant? Are you chasing guinea fowl now? Oh no, another stork. Love the attitude of these youngsters. Much enjoyment to be had by watching them. Seems to have calmed down now. He's done his part, protected the rest of the group, got rid of those pesky storks. Well done, well done. Highly likely it's a young boy. Now we're going to come and hide behind Mum, just in case the storks come back. Ooh. All the dance moves, this little one. Dial UK, he's looking for trouble, certainly. I think he's looking to cause trouble, certainly. Carry on like that, trouble will find you. Yeah, I believe we don't see elephants very often up here, which is surprising. So there's lots of Mopani up in this area, and elephants do like Mopani trees. Those are all the orange ones that you can see. They have the beautiful bilobed leaves. Even the word Mopani comes from an old African word meaning butterfly because of the shape of those leaves. So I'm surprised we don't see many elephants here, but I suppose we haven't seen much elephant dung in the peripheries here, which would substantiate that claim. Jill, Beatrix, yeah, elephants don't like bees. They do have sensitive skin despite the thickness, certain areas around the ears and the trunks, lots of nerve endings. So no, elephants don't like bees at all, and they will run away from bees to the point that some people put up beehives in areas close to fences to try and dissuade elephants from potentially breaking out of fences. And it's also another reason why drones are thought to be quite effective in terms of chasing away elephants, or one of the reasons that elephants don't like drones is because it sounds like a swarm of bees. If any of you have ever been caught in a swarm of bees, it is not a fun experience. I did have one of those incidents up in Makaleki in the north of Kruger, completely minding my own business, and a big swarm of bees came past and I got stung 6 or 7 times for no apparent reason whatsoever. And it's horrible. You panic. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. So no, elephants do not like bees. Oh, everyone's having a lie down. Well, this is a wonderful way to finish it. We're into the last minute, I think, but we've seen some really special scenes today. Look at this. What a way to finish. Elephant climbing frame going on over there. Elands were very special. Lots of shenanigans with the zebras. And what a fabulous way to finish. All pile on. Bit of a bundle. An elephant bundle. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. It's like the scene out of WWE. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I'll see you tomorrow again at 12:30, and look forward to sharing more wonderful moments with you, whatever your plans are for the rest of the day. I hope you enjoy them, and I will see you again tomorrow. But for now, let's finish off with these wonderfully playful Ellies.
Well, a very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for joining us again for our highlight show on this beautiful Friday afternoon. My name is Cedric, and behind the camera with me, we've got Muscles and Paul. And yes, coming directly from Djuma Private Game Reserve in the northern Sabi Sands. And well, in the next half an hour, we are going to discuss exactly what we've been seeing from yesterday's sunset safari to this morning's very exciting sunrise safari. And we'll also go chat to Liam. This is On Safari. Well, as you know, this is an interactive show. So if you've got any comments and questions or suggestions that you do want to send through to us this afternoon here on the highlight show, if you are watching on the YouTube channel, make sure that you can join up as a member. As you know, if you join up as a member, you get some amazing benefits with that. And one of those benefits is that you do watch these shows ad free. Or if you are watching on the WildEarth website, that is wildearth.tv, make sure that you do register with us and you can send those comments and questions through. Or if you just want to have a good old chat to one of us and to the directors there in Johannesburg, just go on to hashtag WildEarth on X and you can have a good good old chat with them, and they can send us some questions through. Well, if it is your first time joining us on this highlight show, what's going to happen in the next half an hour? I've got a couple of nice highlight clips that's been pretty much put forward to show everybody what's been happening on yesterday afternoon's drive and this morning's sunrise safari, as well as, and we're going to go chat to Lee Ham, as he is busy prepping himself, getting ready for this afternoon's drive, and he'll tell you exactly what his plans are, as well as Paul and myself will tell you exactly what our plans are for this afternoon. But the first thing, let's get to our first highlight clip, and it was very nice to see this situation. I've seen processionary worms before. Many years ago, crossing in Kruger National Park, and there was thousands of them crossing together. And yesterday afternoon we were very lucky to bump into the processionary worms once again, and this time they weren't crossing any roads. They were all kind of huddled up on a tree and busy keeping warm. So let's go and take a look at that first highlight clip. Wow, everybody, look at this. We've got a string of hairy caterpillars, and they're all covering up this branch. And there's not just that one, there's got like about several different ones all over this tree. I think this looks like the processionary worm. I might be wrong, but it looks like it. So these are the caterpillars where if they are moving, they move together and they move in one long line towards a certain tree. And that's exactly what's happened here. It looks like they've all come towards this, it looks like, I'm trying to look what tree this is. It looks like a little bit of a monkey orange in that. So, but they're all coming to this tree now. So you can see one there. And then I don't know if, from Paul, you want to try and look down this side? Yeah, can you? Is it possible? Not really.
Yeah, it is.
You got it there, eh?
Yeah.
So you can see it all bunched up here as well. And that's just two of these little balls here at the moment. But there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 balls of caterpillars. That's all kind of grouped together. Now, very interesting. And then these caterpillars are the ones that's got those fine, fine hairs on them. And if they do get onto you, those hairs can do a lot of damage to your skin. It can actually cause like a burning sensation on your skin. And they're all kind of grouping up like this. Now, I don't know if it's because of the weather that it's so cold that they haven't moved much and they're just sticking there, and they haven't pretty much, or they're not moving around at all. So very possible, but this is so fascinating. Well, that was quite amazing to see that. I really enjoyed that sighting. So I did take a look. So it's from the processionary moth. So that's known as processionary caterpillars, and it's from the processionary moth, also known as a bag nest moth. So, and all of them. So what's amazing about that, they'll all feed. That's actually the larva stage for the processionary moth. And at that time, you'll find once they finish feeding on one tree, then they will have a leader that'll go down and the rest will follow. So it'll be pretty much head on tail, head on tail, head on tail, head on tail, and they'll follow each other in a line. And the leader will leave a pheromone or like a chemical clue, pheromone or a chemical clue. And what's amazing about that is that even when they leave that pheromone and chemical clue, the leader will also leave like a strand of silk behind, and all of them will follow each other by using that. And if you break that line up, if you kind of, maybe an animal walks past or something goes over one of them or something happens, they become disorientated, completely disorientated. You'll find they won't come back into line again. All of a sudden you'll have 2 or 3 wandering off, another 2 or 3 wandering off this side. So very interesting. And they're pretty much like milkwood and wild pear and hornthorn. Those are the kind of leaves that the processionary worm will actually feed on. And I think that was a milkwood that they were busy feeding on there yesterday afternoon. And yes, and those hairs are very toxic. But there is several different species of processionary worms that you do get in the world. Apparently the processionary worms in Europe, the hairs are way more toxic than the processionary worms here in South Africa. These ones, those hairs, if they still get into you, They will still cause quite a burning sensation, still quite an irritation. But the ones in Europe, apparently, if children or even a dog has to sniff and go and investigate, and it gets those hairs stuck into the nose or into the lip area and all that, it can cause a big problem. So what a great sighting. I think that was one of the nice things to kind of follow up on, and well, I'm hoping that we're going to find some more of those sightings this afternoon. All right, enough with that one. Ready for the next. Okay, let's go to our second clip. And let's go and see exactly what Steve-O found yesterday afternoon in the Molawati drainage.
Okay, the scientific name is Merops pusillus, and pusillus basically means in Latin very small. First naturalized or first annotated in an ornithological journal in 1776. So it's been around, and its beak is designed for catching insects. It is definitely not a seed-eating beak, a conical shape of a beak. When we look at it, waxbill is a typical kind of conical shaped seed eater, and this bird is definitely an insect eater, and the behavior it's exhibiting is that of hawking, very characteristic of a bee eater and a flycatcher, and then often coming back and landing on the beautifully placed branch that an elephant, our keystone species, has broken and placed there perfectly for the task of this little bird. There are going to be emergences of small little insects coming out, and the bee eater with their hawking ability, and look at the eye, he's looking, very good field of vision. Now obviously insects were the first organisms to come around that could fly, and they dominated. So they moved in, they were like, hey, we're just going to take over the skies, we take over the land, take over everything. And then along came birds and thought, well, I can capitalize on these very